Hi, my name is Tyler, and this is Aftertouch Audio. Today we're going to be going over vocoders and how to use these awesome plugins to not only put an effect on your vocals, but on other sound sources as well. And in this video, I will show you a sound designer's perspective on how to get the most out of these plugins. But before we jump into this video, consider joining our Discord link below. We have an amazing community that not only collaborates together, but also offers feedback on things that you're working on. I'm fairly active on Discord, and I usually give long-form feedback, or I will spend a few hours on the live chat, so just come say hi. What is a vocoder? To simply put it, a vocoder is a plugin or module that allows you to sonically influence one sound source with another sound source. Typically, we'll see this effect used on vocals or dialogue, but I'm here to tell you,
nay, you can use vocoders on just about anything.
Okay, thank you. But yes, you can really use vocoders on any two sound sources you like and come up with some really cool effects. Before we get started, let's go over some common controls that you'll see on most vocoders. Carrier and modulator. A vocoder will always consist of at least two input sources, the carrier and the modulators. The carrier is typically an instrument or a different sustained sound, and the modulator is typically the human voice or another sound source that you wish to affect. The carrier is run through a series of parallel bandpass filters, each covering a narrow or broad range of frequencies. Each filter is then fed into its own VCA, voltage controlled amplifier, or DCA, digital controlled amplifier. These voltage or digital controlled amplifiers are used to control the outputs of the filters. The modulator is then run through an identical set of bandpass filters and then through a series of envelope followers, which will basically follow the amplitude of the modulator. These effects create a synthetic impression of the modulator that we can then superimpose onto the carrier. Carrier type. Okay, there are multiple different types of carriers that we can use to achieve different effects, including noise oscillators, which introduces a variety of different noises and textures, external samples, which allows you to use your voice or pre-recorded samples, pitch tracking, which acts like a basic auto-tune, think Gladys.
Welcome to the final test.
And even use the modulator itself as a carrier, which turns a single sample into a resynthesized version of itself. Okay, now that we're done with the complicated bits, let's go over some basic controls that we can use to process a sound further. Number of bands. This control will allow you to increase or decrease the number of bandpass filters the vocoder is using. More bands will result in a more accurate translation, but will require more CPU to process the signal. Fewer bands will give you less detail, but will give you more of a lo-fi effect. If you're using this on your voice and you want to be able to be intelligible, try increasing the number of bands, as it will process the mid and high range more accurately, as this is where all the sibilance and enunciation is located. Filter bands. On most vocoders, you'll see a module that looks like this. If we think of this module like a mixing console, each of these lines represents a volume fader and they correspond to each filter. If we lower the amount of filters, you can see the number of volume faders decrease. If you find that there is too much low end coming through your finished sound, you can use these faders to adjust the lower frequencies. And if you find that there's too much high end, you can target and dampen some of the higher frequencies. Bandwidth. No, this control has nothing to do with download speeds. It will, however, control the crossover or lack thereof between the bandpass filters. Leaving this parameter at 100% will give you a very neutral and natural sound. Increasing the bandwidth, however, will create overlaps between your bandpass filters, and lower values will provide more separation between the filters, which gives you more crystalline textures. Upper and lower range. This control sets the upper and lower ranges that the bandpass filters will use. Think about this like a parallel high and low cut filters. Depth. This will control how much of the modulator amplitude envelope is applied to the signal, where 0% won't apply anything and 200% will only let high peaks through. Attack and release controls. Just like a compressor, the attack will allow you to adjust how quickly the vocoder responds to the amplitude changes in the modulator signal, and the release control just adjusts how long the filter bands will hold on to the amplitude level before fading to zero. Basically, these two controls contribute to how aggressive the vocoder is going to be. Formant shifting. This control shifts the frequencies of the filter banks up or down. Please note that this is not controlling the tuning where it goes up or down in semitones, but it will smoothly glide up and down in hertz. Now, we all know that classic vocoder sound in some really popular songs, but we can use the vocoders in a large number of ways outside of vocals. Here is one of my all-time favorite musical examples of a vocoder. Tim Henson is an absolutely crazy guitarist. I've linked the full song in the description below. Now, I know there are a lot of controls on a vocoder, which can make these plugins a little complicated to use, but I have some tips for you. In my last video where I talked about underwater sound effects, you guys shared a lot of really cool tips on how you yourself build underwater sound effects. Tim Preble, I'm really sorry if I butchered your name, he shared with me how to use a vocoder to get an underwater sound effect. If you combine broadband bubbles, water lapping, waves crashing, or even rivers flowing with things like explosions or even vocals, you can submerge just about anything you would like underwater. Here are a few examples. I have left a full link to Tim's article below. It's a really good read. People named Tim are really good at using vocoders. When you are using vocals or voices through a vocoder, try over-articulating your words or lyrics. Since the original voice won't be heard in the finished sound, a lot of the intelligibility is lost once the voice is processed. So it is a really good idea to over-enunciate your words in order to be understood. Yeah, you'll sound silly, but you'll be understood. Use sound sources with a broad frequency spectrum. High-end energy is extremely important in the carrier signal as we are sending them through a limited number of filters. Lower frequencies will come through much clearer as the distance between low frequencies is much larger, where the upper frequencies are much tighter, so we're going to lose a lot of high-end when using a vocoder. I've left links to some of my favorite vocoder plugins below, including some free options for you. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving it a like and subscribe, as it really helps out the channel and allows me to make videos more frequently. And if you want to up your sound design game, consider joining our Discord below.
Yeah, go make some noise.